Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So I just did the parts of the video you're about to see. The next, I don't know, 30 minutes or so. And my wife and I went out. We were talking about this a little bit. And, I realized something that is important to say. My time is now. Pockets of the future time is now. In terms of, this is my peak time. Like, this is when people are realizing the system's going to collapse, right? And you're going to have this election, and there's going to be an outcome. And things are immediately going to get worse. I mean, 2025 rolls around, things are going to get worse. And you're going to see it. There's going to be more and more intensity and less, people believing that the system can be saved. And, that's what I've been saying for years. And so it's a part of what I do here, the whole idea of pockets of the future. And so if there's ever a time that my channel is relevant, it's this next phase, right? It's, going to be more and more relevant as time goes on. And more people who realize that they can't save the system, that there's no chance of saving the system. Then there's this here, right? Because I know about this. I've talked about this for years. I understand about this. I understand what it means and why it's happening. And from a spiritual perspective, I don't think anybody else in the truth community is talking about this unless they've, been affected by my message for years. But if there's a time where I'm going to be validated, and that's not really all that important because me being validated means that the system's collapsing, right? And so it's not like me being validated is important. But, this is my time, right? This, talking about YouTube and all the things I'm going on with YouTube, if there's ever a chance that my channel can be utilized and people can benefit from it, it's when the things that I've been saying for years are going to happen, and the preparation that people need and the feelings that they have and what they're going through, and I can address all those things, which many of you guys know. And so my channel is like, this is the pinnacle time for my channel, right? I mean, in terms of all the things that pockets of the future represent, right? The pre-apocalypse, during the apocalypse type of preparation, so one can, graduate over to the other side and make the adjustments and changes they need to endure this time period. And so I want to talk about that more in other videos as well. But, in terms of all the struggles I'm having now financially with YouTube and YouTube's policies, my channel, like, this is when it's relevant. This is the time that my channel has more value than other times, right? So I'm going to get into that more as we go through this. I'm going to talk about some other things and the truthers that YouTube likes and recommends and things and some of these other things. There's a distinction between recommending, which I'll talk about, and being notified. Like, if you subscribe to a channel, they might notify you. But in terms of the videos that get recommended in your sidebar and get recommended in your searches, there are channels that don't get recommended and videos that they'll never recommend because, they're shadow banning even though they say they're not, right? And so that's what that means. But anyways, let's get into the other stuff here. But there's one more thing I had to say. So my wife was saying you used to say, please subscribe and hit the like button. And I don't like saying that, I don't like telling people what to do or whatever, but I'm going to remind people, if you want to see this channel continue, or you want to help this channel continue, certainly there's a membership program, and people are making, one-time donations as well. That's very helpful, and I'm grateful for those. But also just subscribing, making sure you're subscribed, and hitting the like button every time when you watch a video, just because it helps the algorithms. It helps people, again, YouTube's still going to, do what they're going to do, but, at least in terms of just intention alone. And so doing those things, making those small efforts, not only for my channel, but any channel, make sure to hit your like button and you subscribe, and make sure you stay subscribed. You are, saying to YouTube, they're gathering data that you like this channel has value or whatever else, right? And so, I gotta, it sucks for me to remind people all the time, but, it's what needs to happen at this particular time anyway. All right, so let's get into the other stuff here. Greetings, brothers and sisters. So I got a bunch of normal stuff to get to. Just briefly want to talk about the YouTube thing. I have no interactions with YouTube itself, but there's a part of it I didn't talk about, and that's YouTube and Google and Amazon and Disney and all these companies are broke, right? They're hemorrhaging money and they're laying off employees. And just across the economy is way worse than they're saying. Because, well, let's just look at this here. So this is from Forbes. If you thought your job search was rigged against you, here's why you're not wrong. And the first part here is posting fake job listings. There are a number of reasons why job applicants will see online job postings for positions that companies are not actually hiring for. For example, when there are layoffs or if it's challenging economic climate, some businesses will post fake jobs to create the illusion that the company is doing well and growing. While the role may be real, the company doesn't have any intention of hiring someone for that position. Often jobs are posted on a company's career website and scrapped by job aggregation sites. As time goes by, the human resources person forgets about the listing and it remains online if it's still available, much to the chagrin of the job seekers who never hear back from their resume submissions. There was originally, my wife had sent me this and somehow I didn't get the link, but it was another article about the same thing, and part of it is they don't want their employees to panic because the employees are thinking they're going to get, laid off. And so what they'll do is they'll post job listings to make it look like they're hiring. And that way the employees were like, oh, we're not being laid off. They're actually hiring people. And so, this is, happening all the time now, right? And so YouTube is amongst many companies that are laying off. Google, YouTube, that are laying off all these, people. Of course, we know about, let's just go through the articles here. Google lays off hundreds of core employees, moves some positions to India and Mexico. So that happened this year. There's other articles here. Google lays off core employees. Google layoffs time restructuring more layoffs. Google cuts at least 100 jobs across the 100 layoffs here. Washington Post, YouTube lays off 43 unionized Google contractors. List of major U.S. companies slashing staff this year, from Tesla to Lucid Motors to Google and Apple. And of course, we know about Disney's Iger reveals 7,000 layoffs and restructuring move. So you have all these companies, like you could go to all these layoffs that are happening everywhere. Big layoffs that are happening. And all these, companies that were supposed to be very stable and are, a part of the beastly system, right? These are big-time names of companies that are, the A-list companies. So one more thing before I move on here. Here's the U.S. national debt clock. And the last time I looked at it was at like 31, maybe 32. It's gone up $2-3 trillion since the last time I've looked at it. And I look at it fairly frequently. Since it was, I think, at $9 trillion, so it's tripled since I first started looking at this back in 2012, 13, 14, or whatever it is. Some of my old screenshots of this thing. But the reality is that every minute, there's $3 trillion more added to $1 million added to the national debt. Now, in terms of the U.S. Tax revenue, it usually was around 3.1, 3.2, 3.4. It'd go up a little bit. But now, all of a sudden, it's taking a huge jump to almost $5 trillion. So that's the American budget. But we always are spending more money than we are bringing in. So this is the tax revenues, but still the debt is being added to. We have the U.S. total debt, which is over $100 trillion here. And then the derivatives market down here, which is at $600 trillion, and just all this debt right here. And then these are the unfunded liabilities, 26 trillion dollars for Social Security, which is screwed, and Medicare is $41 trillion, and the total U.S. underfunded liabilities, these are things that aren't part of the budget that America owes, is at $216 trillion, right? So crazy amounts of debt. Like you can't even comprehend where are you going to get $216 trillion? Where are you going to get $34 trillion, right? When this is your income, how are you going to pay off this? If your income is $4 trillion, how are you going to pay off $34 trillion when the debt keeps on accumulating? And so, it's just not possible. And so this became apparent, in the last election. I said whoever was going to win that election was going to be in charge of the looting of what was left of the American wealth. They were going to break America up like a corporation, like a hostile takeover. And you see where the payouts and the bailouts and the stuff has gone to. They're just going to take whatever wealth was left. Because America can't afford to pay its bills, right? America can't pay its Social Security, can't pay its Medicaid, can't pay any of these things. We're living above our means, right? We have whatever the amount of budget is, and we don't have enough money to pay it, right? All the money that we bring in terms of the tax revenue, is already spoken for. And then the interest on the debt keeps accumulating. And so America is completely effed. We've known this for a while. And, when the bailouts happened, some under Trump and some under Biden, when the economy was shut down, and the bailouts happened, it was around $12 trillion they added to the debt without adding it, like it didn't go right into the debt. It's still matriculating in. But they had these massive bailouts. And I knew that the dollar was then worth, the inflation was going to double or triple. When you went to the store, you were going to pay triple or, quadruple what you're used to pay, right? Like things would be like, things that used to be $5 would be $20. And so, gallon of gas would be, like $15 or something. That's where we're at. And that's where we should be at. But they've done things to keep the economy from us experiencing the true nature of inflation. But printing all that money in the bailouts and just, the closing of the economy was devastating to the American economy, and there's no recovery. But every election year, they try to make it look like it's better than it is. The incumbent president, the policies, the powers that be, it's just they fudge the numbers when they all know that the inflation's way worse than it is. They've kept gold prices down. They've raised the interest rates to keep real estate prices down, because that's where you see the inflation in its full form. When an ounce of gold is $6,000 and used to be $2,000, that the dollar has tanked, right? So they've purposely manipulated these prices to keep them from being what they truly are. And so you'll see in the election year, they'll pretend that the economy is better than it is, the sitting president. And then after the election, there'll be an economic hit. It happens all the time. It happens every year after December. December's the big, money spending month, Christmas, up until December. And then the new year happens. At YouTube, all the ad buys are gone and, there's no ad revenue. And so, so all those things. But that's what we're looking at, right? The economy's really bad right now. And people are feeling it, right? Some people are feeling it more. Blue states are feeling it really, places with big cities. People are moving away from these places. And money's leaving states like New York and California, people with money. So all these things, right? So this is something you got to take in consideration when we're talking about, all of it, all the things that I've been talking about here. Okay, so let's move to the next thing. And so there's a piece to this that, I haven't included as much as I should have. The whole thing with YouTube and all of these platforms. You see it on Twitter, obviously. That's hemorrhaging money because of ad revenue loss. And they don't want to make as big a deal about these other platforms. Some of it has to do with the kids going to TikTok and some of these other, whatever it is. And there's a lot more video platforms out there, and young people are not into YouTube. Like, young people don't watch YouTube like previous generations. But part of it is that the economic climate is so bad right now. And that, I was talking about the uh, Jeff Van Gundy, Mark Jackson getting fired by ESPN. Remember, ESPN, which is part of Disney, has massive layoffs. In my last video on my Apocalypse Now channel, I talked about this again. Jeff Van Gundy was a former coach, and he is one of his players, Mark Jackson, who was a former coach and a player. And they had good banter, right? And they both Jeff Van Gundy was a coach for New York Knicks, and Mark Jackson was a player, and Mike Breen, who was the play-by-play guy, was the standard and best, sort of announcer, Emmy-winning announcer, right? So he worked for ABC Disney, but he also was the announcer for the New York Knicks, and they were like the best in the business. Like those of us who watch sports just saw them, if experienced they were entertaining, they were funny, and they added to the show. Like, sports is a show, and the announcer is there to help, promote the show. And Jeff Van Gundy was often sort of kind of a basketball conspiracy theorist, and he'd come up with these theories, and it was well, they were just great. And so when ABC Disney laid off Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy, it was kind of a shock, right? It was kind of like no one saw that coming because they were the best broadcasting team. They were making $2 million a year. And they replaced them with Doc Rivers, who was a guy with a very hoarse voice. I mean, everyone kind of mocks his voice. And it just gets worse. He's a coach that it would just get worse as by the end of the game he couldn't speak at all. And he isn't funny. Like, he's the opposite of funny. And Doris Burke, who is like watching a basketball game and have your mom tell you what's going on, or your grandmother or something. And she isn't funny either. And Doc Rivers ended up getting hired, so they brought in J.J. Redick, who is good at his, he does a podcast, but he sucks at announcing. And he's, not funny like the other guys are. And he started copying Doris Burke in weird ways, and just the way that, the whole thing. And so Jeff Van Gundy didn't talk about it, but he was recently interviewed, and he talked about how his son went to college, and that his someone like his sister-in-law, someone in his family, committed suicide, died, and then his best friend died of cancer. So this is part of what's happening, right? This is a two-part thing where there's turbo cancer and people are, dying, and people are getting depressed, and there's all these psychological issues post-COVID and the shutdown and just everything that's happening pre-apocalypse. But then his brother, Stan Van Gundy, came on and was interviewed a week earlier. And he was asked about it. He said that ESPN crapped all over him. He used the S word. He said that they waited till all the coaching jobs were filled and then fired him, and then delayed a contract negotiation so he was freed up to go work somewhere else. They fired him, but they kept him under contract so he couldn't seek other jobs. And so Jeff Van Gundy just got a job as the chief assistant coach of the Los Angeles Clippers, right? So he's found work, but this is a year later, the year after they screwed him over. I watched those videos. A video of Stephen A. Smith talking about it came up, because Stephen A. Smith is the sort of center of ESPN Disney, and Stephen A. Smith said that he was hesitant to get the boop, but didn't want to lose out his $8 million, and they made it mandatory, right? Disney was the worst. Of course, Disney's got into it with Elon Musk. But Stephen A. Smith, kind of alluded to the conversation with these conversations that the Van Gundys had. And he said that, he missed Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson. He said that they were the best, they were just a great team. And he said that, but people don't understand the massive layoffs that have happened at ESPN. And I, was thinking about that in terms of the YouTube thing, that these businesses are not doing very well. And I just don't think YouTube has, all these businesses across the board, they're all laying off. All these businesses are suffering. And the layoffs and cuts are a part of financial issues that they're having, and a lack of usage, a lack of customers, a lack of ad revenue, right? I mean, that's what this is all about, because they're all competing. They're all in the commercial games, right? ESPN, Disney. Disney has Marvel movies, which are tanking because some of this has to do with the cultural aspects of things, right? Where right-wing people are starting to, maybe not boycott, but just not watch things they used to watch because of the cultural issues and there's a divide now. And we saw it with Bud Light with a boycott, but we see it now with these other companies. Like right-wing people are not as big on going to Disney World, for example, and watching some of these sports because of the left-wing agenda that's being pushed, and some of these other things, the division within the country, and just people have less money. Like people are, because of the inflation, people have less money to spend, and there's less money for these businesses, so there's less ad revenue. But ESPN and YouTube and all these platforms all are, they have ad money, right? They're even in an election year, there's less ad revenue and less memberships. People are canceling memberships and things like this. And so all these companies are suffering because of this, right? Because of this process. And YouTube's a big part of that, because Google and YouTube are not doing very well financially. And they're not admitting to it, but they are by laying people off and some of the other decisions they've made. And, they're losing to TikTok and all these other things. Like there's another platform that's on the rise, and there's, when that happens, it's like MySpace and Facebook, right? And so the new it thing. I mean, these platforms come and go, and we've seen it over the years. Like the younger generation doesn't like the same media platforms their parents do, and so they go on these other social media platforms and things like this, and that's happening. And so there isn't any money available. They're not able to pay us as creators like they used to, and they're doing something different financially to restructure it so they can turn a profit. But they're pissing everybody off, and creators are leaving or making less content. And this isn't just truthers, but of course truthers are always going to be shit on first, right? They're always going to deprive truthers first and foremost, because they're undesirable to the platform. But they are desirable because people want to watch truther videos. And so they're caught between, Scylla and Charybdis, right? A rock in a hard place. With Scylla is a sea monster, and Charybdis is a whirlpool. But anyways, the Greek mythology or whatever it was. And so I just recently heard that, and I remembered it from when I was a kid, when I was in school. But anyways, this is what's happening. And so this is a dying platform. YouTube is a dying platform. It's always been top heavy. And because of the censorship, because of the restriction, because of the political division, because of all these things. And so there just isn't as much ad revenue, and people don't have as much money. So it's like, in terms of going to a membership type situation, because like if you watch, 5 different truthers or whatever it is, like, you're going to be able to pay a subscription based to each one, right? So it becomes something like this. And then it becomes like a competitive type thing, which is, undesirable. And so this is the internet right now, because this is the economy. And it's something we all have to, think about and deal with. And I'm going to have to, it's something personally that I'm going to be thinking about. And, I have more time now because I'm making less content on my backup channel. And so, that's the YouTube piece. So there's one more thing I want to show you about YouTube. And it's the kind of truther. Let me go to that here. So I wanted to show you this. So this is the Rubin Report. Now, I saw this guy interviewed, RFK Jr. He's a fan of RFK Jr. I don't know what he is now. But this guy is what YouTube will allow to be sort of alternative media. This is what YouTube thinks is a quality truther. Because YouTube recommended this video. YouTube won't recommend real truthers stuff. And no matter how much you watch, occasionally, I don't know, maybe, I don't know, you guys all have your own experience with the YouTube feed. But I never get recommended real truther stuff, and haven't in years. And even when I search for it, they won't show it to me. But this guy, they recommended to me. And he has 2.3 million subscribers. So he's got 2 million subscribers. This has 217 views. They'll also recommend Joe Rogan. So they know there are people out there that want truth or stuff, but this is the stuff they're willing to put out there. And it's very remedial. You know, you can call it truth or stuff, but really it's not. So they're talking about Trump with, Joe Rogan's talking about Trump with Tim Dillon.
Why would I imagine that they would manipulate everything openly except the election?
Comedian Tim Dillon was on Joe Rogan's.
So, you know, that's, again, not a huge take, right? Like that's, you know, barely Truther 101. Because, you know, not understanding, well, I'm going to get into the Trump stuff first. This guy's a Trumper.
Show, and he was talking about how Trump's going to beat Biden from jail.
Definitely think there's a little bit of that going on. I don't think that's
Trump will beat him, I think, from jail.
Yeah, 100%.
Trump will win.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's real.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's not. None of it's real. And I talked about this, you know, deeper levels. All life on planet Earth is an illusion. The third dimensional reality is illusion. So, like, everything isn't real. But certainly all this stuff to do with the election, everything in mainstream media, and I'm including Joe Rogan and these guys here.
No, I mean, look, I don't want to cry election fraud.
This is what
you know what I'm saying?
But this is what I'm saying to you. Is it not possible that they haven't gone off Joe Biden because there was some in the last election?
It's just, you know, this is not truth or stuff, right?
Well,
is it not possible to...
But I want to get to the part where this guy talks here. This is the part, because it's about his show. But this guy's saying this here.
A name for asking.
It's worth asking all of these questions, right? Putting aside election fraud and everything else, why is the system running cover right now for a man we all know who has dementia, who the corruption around him stinks to high hell? We see now, I mean, we've shown you in the last 45 minutes, we've shown you plenty of the evidence of how they've run cover for.
You know, the system, the people control the system, and the system itself could, at any time they want, get rid of Trump. I've said this over and over again. Remember when they canceled him across all social media platforms, and Trump built his own stupid platform, which I said he should have done a long time ago? But then they gave him back his platforms now. But even without that, you know, they can make you disappear no matter who you are. I mean, they can certainly kill you, but they don't even have to do that, right? And so they've done everything but that. The left wing and the Democrats, the left wing media, MSNBC, CNN, and the Democrats talk about Trump more than anything else. That's all they do is talk about Trump. Why would they do that if they're scared of Trump? Why would they embolden him? Because the way the division has gone, and they've pushed for division. It's their division. They've wanted to divide people. But the way that the division has gone, the way that they've divided people is for their benefit, right? Because of divide and conquer. And so they're not scared of the dividing people because that's all they ever do, right? And because of this division, when MSNBC or Fox or the Democrats talk about something they don't like, what's the immediate reaction of the right wing and everybody else? Oh, that's, you know, if they attack somebody, if the mainstream media attacks somebody, what do the Republican right wing, especially right wing truthers do? Well, they say, oh, you're attacking this guy. He's our hero, right? I mean, look at how there's a guy, you know, Fauci, for example. How many people knew about Fauci before COVID? How many people had an opinion about Fauci before COVID, right? And so the Democrats said, oh, Fauci's great. And the Republicans say, oh, this guy's evil, right? This is how it always goes. If the Republicans like somebody, the Democrats demonize them. If Fox News is promoting somebody, the Democrats immediately dislike him. That's how you know who to like or who to dislike, who's on your side, who's not, because of who embraces him. Which side embraces somebody, and you know this is how it is with Trump. And so when the so-called mainstream media talks about Trump and negative way about Trump, and they, you know, prosecute Trump and they Trump, it makes Trump's support go up, right? So they want Trump's support to go up. They want people to support Trump. They're pushing that's how they do it. Like when every time they talk about Trump, I mean, who uses Morning Joe clips and CNN clips about Trump? The Trumpers, right? They show you what they're saying about Trump, and they show what the Democrats are saying about Trump, right? And Trump's support goes up. Every time Trump is attacked by the media, every time Trump gets convicted of something or goes on trial, his support goes up. Because if those guys who suck and who you hate are after Trump, then they must be scared of Trump. So that's the stupidest take ever. This guy's supposed to be a truther, right? This is what YouTube will allow, right-wing truth that sucks and is stupid, and, people who can't differentiate between, can't see below the game itself, right? Like they're provoking the mob, Trump's support system. And even if you start to see through Trump and you dislike Trump, if you dislike Trump and you realize Trump sucks and he's part of it, when the left attacks him, you're like, well, he's still better than Biden or whatever it is, right? Like this is the remedial minds and the remedial approach to this thing. Because they love Trump. Trump is their asset. Marjorie Taylor Greene is their asset. AOC and Biden are Republican assets because they give you energy into your system, into your base, into your movement. Your enemies give you the energy because people will rally against Biden. They'll rally against AOC. They'll rally against CNN and MSNBC. It gives them energy. It gives them anger. It gives them fear. It gives them all the things they need to motivate people to vote, and not only vote, but support them and watch them and all these things, right? But Trump is at the center of everything. It's not about Biden. It's never been about Biden. Biden is, the guy they picked to beat Trump because he was the guy that they thought could most likely beat Trump. Because Biden was a centrist and some of the Republicans liked him, when he ran for president. But Biden isn't a Biden time, isn't a Biden presidency. Trump has been the dominant figure because they made him that. And when Trump was president, they pushed more of their liberal agenda and they pushed more of their social agenda than ever before. Certainly more than when Obama or Biden were president. And so this is a stupid take, right? This guy isn't a truther, but YouTube recommend this guy because this is the kind of stuff they're willing to show you, like the stuff that's, like almost like kind of like truther stuff, but, it's just stupid stuff, right? If you can't see past the fact that Trump is their guy, they talk about Trump more than anything. Trump is their God, right? He's their demigod. He's their, it's like some people are obsessed with the devil. They're obsessed with Trump. Like all they do is ever talk. Jimmy Kimmel brought a porn star that Trump banged on his show, and he brought a tray full of mushrooms out to see what Trump's manhood, his member looked like. Like that's how much they're obsessed with it. Like Jimmy Kimmel wants to know what Trump's Johnson looks like, right? Like that's how much they're into the guy. That's all they ever talk about. Like the center of all their doings, and they don't have an agenda without him. And so Trump is their guy. He's their asset. They could have killed him. They could have locked him up in prison. They can do these things anytime they want. The system's completely rigged, and Trump has done things. Trump has done criminal things his whole existence. Trump has pushed for, he breaks the rules. He pushes the rules, just like all these people do. It's like when they locked Martha Stewart up, right? Why'd they do that? Why'd they lock Martha Stewart up and not other people? Why'd they lock Bernie Madoff up and not other people, right? Like when they lock somebody up, there's a reason for it. Somebody's in the club. Why'd they kill Jeffrey Epstein? Like why was, Jeffrey Epstein was given all these privileges. He didn't even, he was convicted of something and he did his, like basically no real prison time. And he was like, under house arrest. He was convicted of this stuff, and then it came back around and they killed him. They supported him. They loved the guy. They protected him until they couldn't. And then they threw him under the bus, but they disappeared the guy. You hear him talking. Did they talk about Jeffrey Epstein? No. Not like they talk about Trump. So like it's just a silly remedial take that somehow Trump and the election are, like there's an outcome where Trump wins and it's somehow better for everybody. There's no difference. Like they're both cancers. They're both poison. They're both bad guys. And neither one is running anything. Neither one is a legitimate leader. They're both puppets. But when Trump was president, there was a liberal uprising. There was a BLM and there was the Antifa movement and all the other things that went with it. There was the switch of genders, the other idea, all this gender stuff was pushed through. All that stuff happened. All that liberal movement, all the censorship that happened on social media, all that stuff happened under Trump. You know, the fake news narrative, all these things, right? All of this stuff happened when Trump was president. They grabbed more power, the left did, when Trump was president than they ever could have under multiple Democratic presidents. So why does YouTube recommend this guy? This guy's got millions of subscribers. He obviously sucks. You know, I saw a little bit of the RFK interview. I don't remember that one because this guy I think was worse as an interviewer. He has remedial concepts just like Joe Rogan. Like Joe Rogan has some, you know, stuff about COVID and the bloop and things like this. Joe Rogan has some truther stuff, like he was at least talking about the bloop and all that stuff, right? But in terms of, you know, these people that YouTube will recommend, it's because they're controlled and they want people who are a part of the left-right paradigm. They don't want people saying they're both rigged, they're both owned, they're both controlled. Because then you won't vote. Then you won't participate, right? Then you'll move beyond, you know, most of the energy that's in the news is centered around the left-right debate and the division within our country. If you watch any news program, any mainstream national news program, it's debating, you know, it's demonizing one side and saying, well, we're the good guys and we got to stop these bad guys. That's the message they want to get out. The whole QB thing. Why do you think the QB? YouTube used to recommend QAnon videos. Why would they do that? I mean, they wouldn't recommend my videos. Like, this was years ago. Like, they put this up on, I'm talking about YouTube has a, you know, the YouTube page where they have their trending videos. And they put, you know, this April Lejeune was some QB that was kind of a nightmare. And they put up an Alex Jones video within the same week. And I'm like, this is weird. They put it on trending. And I'm like, why are they putting QAnon? I barely knew what QAnon was. And I looked into it. And I'm like, oh, my God, this is a nightmare. And YouTube was recommending it. YouTube was recommending QAnon videos when QAnon was just becoming a thing. Because they were, you know, they want that kind of stuff. That's what the powers that be do. They want the stuff that's going to divide people. They want the stupid stuff. They don't want stuff that's like, you know, thoughtful and they want sensationalistic things that divide people. You know, the stuff that they say they're most against is the stuff they'll promote. But if you do something where you're reasonable and you're, you know, practical and you're not calling for revolution, you're not calling for, you know, misbehaving, like breaking the law because it's pointless because the system's rigged and there's nothing we can do about stopping its collapse. It's not just that it's rigged, it's collapsing and there's nothing we can do about it. So why, you know, why make more chaos? Why expedite the process, right? You know, they want to expedite the process because there's no money left. Like, they can't pay you what they promised you. The American promise has been broken. The American promise to you, I've said this years and years ago. There was a time when your ancestors, my ancestors, lived in tribal village type of situations. And they had all these skills. And it's like 3, 4, 5 generations ago, depending on, you know, the people. And all of our ancestors were farmers and hunters and, you know, they could do all kinds of things. It's something that I learned when I started a homestead. How much, you know, we look down on farmers. Like, we look down at people who grow food. We don't look at it as dirty work, you know, people who pick fruit, you know, laborers, these people, often immigrants, like whatever it is, right? Migrants, these migrant workers that will go do the hard jobs that Americans, you know, people don't want to do. But we look at it as, you know, being dirty and not a smart, you know, you're not smart if you're a farmer. You're not smart if you're, you know, growing food and you're homesteading. But I realized when I started a homestead years ago, you know, back in 2004 or 5 or whatever, my first reaction was, wow, you're much more of a complete person when you do this type of work. Because what they said to you, what they said to our ancestors were, look, you're toiling with all this food, and there's always going to be, you know, the Irish potato famine. There's always going to be poverty and things like this. And when you're working with nature, nature is always throwing curveballs at you. And sometimes you think you have food and, you know, you're going to go kill one of your cows or something. You're going to slaughter one of your cows. And a wolf gets it, right? Or it just dies of some weird thing, gets hit by lightning. Who knows what it is? Or you think you have a crop. You have a big crop of cabbage out there, a big crop of, your garden's going well. And there's a drought, or there's like intense heat, or, there's a freeze, or some, nature just throws a curveball and you don't get that food. You were just about to harvest it, right? I mean, I watch these guys who are grass farmers who cut their grass for hay. I've noticed this for years, and I've talked to them about it. I know people who are pasture farmers, and they have to hay these fields, and they have all this equipment they've paid for. They're in debt because they have all these these instruments. They have a something that cuts the grass, and they have a hay baler, and they have all these things, right? And there's guys who go to people's pastures who don't have the equipment. Like we have a pasture, and we could have some guy come and he'll do the hay, like he'll hay the field, and we'll take half the bales and he'll take half of them, or something like that, right? Because we don't have the equipment, so he's and he's have to pay off that equipment. And so they have to cut the grass, and the grass has to be cured. It has to be, the sun has to turn it into hay. So it's grass, and they have a spreader that they go through, and they spread the grass, flip it over so all of it gets cured properly and the sun hits it. And then they have to bale it after that's happened. So they need to cut the grass. They need a couple of days where the sun's out, preferably, completely out. But now with the chemtrails, it's always iffy. And then they have to bring it in, and they have to bale it, and then they have to get it into the barn all before it rains. So they might need a week or so. And, they have all these fields they have to hay. They have their own fields and then people's fields that they, they're haying for. And so they need a couple weeks of no rain in the summer. The first cut is in spring, and it's always iffy because it's always raining a lot. It just takes a little bit of rain to wreck the hay, because if you pack the hay when it's wet, it gets moldy, right, obviously. So it's in the bale, and it's got this mold on it, and the mold isn't good for, it'll kill your horses, and it's not great for your cows. And so, the hay will go bad, and you want it to be up for the whole winter. And so that's how nature works, right? Nature is always, you're as a farmer, you're always trying to read nature and, try to, pick the right time and, all these things. And we have fruit trees, and every year we have a late frost, and we have all these fruit blossoms. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's a late frost, and it's like, oh, what happened, right? Well, you had a late frost, and all the blossoms get killed, and you don't have any fruit. Because the flowers, the blossoms, become the apple and become the pear and become the peach or whatever. And so when you're a farmer, that's what you deal with. And so the promise was, hey, you guys are toiling for years. And, there's always going to be hardships, and they could do it when there's a hardship, right? And, the depression, all these things. And so they said, leave your skills behind. Leave all these complicated things you have to deal with on a regular basis, and work a job, get a specialized skill, and you be a cog in the wheel, and you do one thing your whole life, one specific specialized thing, you become an expert in it, and we'll pay you money. And you only have to work so many hours a day. Like as a homesteader and farmer, you might be up in the middle of the night delivering a cow that's, pulling a calf out of your cow because it's not coming out naturally or something. I mean, you look at this Jeremy Clarkson Farm, excellent show on Amazon. It's somewhat staged or whatever, but it shows you the problems with farm life, and there's always a problem. And so they said, stop all this toiling and just do this specialized skill. We'll give you money, and you buy everything else, and you have a lot more free time, and you'll be richer because we'll give you more money than you'll ever make on your farm. And all you have to do is give up your skills, and the system will always be here for you. So it doesn't matter. You're never going to need a backup plan. You never need to go back to this way of life. You're never going to need to go back to the village, go back to the tribe, and you'll have all these amazing things and privileges in the city. You'll have all these things, electricity. You'll have all these other things, that they've. I mean, this is what happened. Like this stuff didn't exist, and all of a sudden it did, right? And everybody had running water and all these things, grocery stores, and you'll have food from around the world, food that you can't even grow at your farm. You'll be able to get all these exotic fruits and vegetables and things that you couldn't do before. So, People left their farm thinking that the system would be strong and always be there for them. And that was the promise. Like the promise was the system, well, you don't need any of these other skills. And of course now you do. Most of the people do. That there's going to be massive food shortages and there's going to be economic strife and there's going to be, whatever, wars and things that are going to happen because of this breakdown of our way. And people started to break down anyway from unnatural behaviors, and they lost their sense of divinity. They lost their, sense of naturalness. And so they, became more and more immoral, and like the idiocracy set in, and they became stupider, and they lost language and words from the internet, and even before that, and they became TV zombies and all this stuff, and just addicted now to the internet and all these other things, and so people became worse. And now, when we're at our weakest, and we're so far removed from remembering what it was like to live on a homestead, we now need a backup plan because the system's imploding, and that's what's happened, right? This is what we're dealing with right now. We're dealing with years and years of not being natural humans, generations of being some people who were, not functioning like a fully functioning human, a multi-functioning human that could grow food and could make clothing and had skills and knew how to do things and could live in community and could, live in a tribe in a village, and all those things aren't possible. People can't even get along with their family, never mind their neighbors. And so there's no sense of ever coming together for collective work and accomplishing things, right? And so that's where we're at, right? And, everything's imploding around that. Like, that's the central issue. Because the user-based economy that they went to, the debt-based economy, which allowed for, and I've talked about this so much, the way that the debt works is allow you to get the money up front so you can buy your farm, you can buy your, factory farm, you can buy your house, you can buy your, you can create businesses and whatever. That's all these guys do. These, so you see it on Shark Tank, right? These Shark Tanks don't give their own money. They don't go into their bank account. They have the ability to get cheap money, low interest rate money, and they take this money and they put into a business, right? And the business is supposed to be more profitable than the interest on the money. So if they're paying 5% interest on the loan, then the amount of percentage they get back from the business from that loaning that money out has to be higher, the amount of the return. And so that's all this ever is, right? And that's the debt-based economy. But the way all usury economies end is the way this one's ending, where the debt just keeps on increasing because of the interest rates, the sorcerer's fee. That's they conjured up this money, the sorcerer, the economic sorcerer, the economic, wizard. They conjured up this fee. And because of that, there's going to be, you're always going to owe more than you originally borrowed. And that's where the debt keeps on just, growing, right, to where it is now. Of course, the derivatives market, it just gets more and more immoral, and they get more and more reckless. And then the economy doesn't work anymore. The numbers never added up, and now it's just they can't even fudge the books. And so that's how the economy explodes and, implodes and these things. And so this is what's happening, right? And then when that happens, what are you going to do? Because you're 100% dependent on the system. You're weak and pathetic, and you have no skills. You don't know what it's like to be a real human being, and you can't live in a community because you're all psychologically messed up. And so it's at the worst time because they made this promise they can never keep. And that's, the downfall of the system was all the way back when your ancestors were lured off the farm. And now you have to scramble and try to figure it out. And it's way harder for you to do it because, you feel like you're entitled to your lifestyle. You feel like your lifestyle is promised to you. And it isn't, because everything is subject to change. And so, this is where we are, right? And because of that, they have to, figure out a way to, take away your, whatever you think you owe, or whatever you're owed, Social Security and the rest of it. And then, somehow control your reaction so you don't, turn into a mob and just go apeshit and go, destroy everything. And so they have to control your reaction, and then they have to program your kids to live in Agenda 30 houses and take the New Deal that you'll never take, right? And so they have to wipe you out, reduce the population of the older people, and indoctrinate the younger people to a new, worse deal because, there's no money left, right? And so that's what they're trying to do, transition into that. But the time of this system is on its. I mean, it's already expired, right? Its expiration date is due. It has been due for years, and so they can't prolong the collapse of the system, even though they're trying to do that. And so that leaves us where we are now. And so anybody telling you about this, I mean, it's not like you're going to do shit about it anyhow, but just the idea of knowing this. And then when it starts to happen, maybe you react in some way. Oh, well, that guy was right. He's saying that this is happening just the way he's saying it's going to happen. And so when you have reference, you have this information out there, and people who, talk about like I'm talking about now, and you get the idea, you understand it, even if you don't believe it or you can't do anything about it at the time. When it starts to happen more and more, then you start reacting, right? You start, people start bailing on the system, and they start, looking into creating some sort of backup plan, and they can't have that, right? And so that's why they'll put out people like Jordan Rubin, but they'll censor like real truthers because, they just don't want any. I mean, even though they control everybody to extent that I think they're not even aware of. Like I think they underestimate their amount of control, because people are so weak and pathetic that they can't even think about. It's too overwhelming to think about what you're going to have to do to survive, and so you just shut it off, even if you're a truther. Anyways, let's get to the other stuff here. So I just want to add one thing about this. If they're going to cheat in the election, like if they really wanted to cheat in the election, and they wanted to do all the things that right-wing people think, they wanted to put Trump in jail, they would do a better job of it, right? Like they wouldn't do it so obviously that it would cause controversy and suspicion in the right wing. They would do all the things that they're doing. Again, you can say, all right, they're incompetent or whatever they are, sure. But they could do it so much easier and better, where there wouldn't be as much evidence that the right-wing people in the truth community and, all the things that they've done, like all the things that we have been able to discover over the years. It wouldn't be so easy to find all those things. There wouldn't be so many inconsistencies. They would just do it like they're doing it where they're showing you they're doing it to provoke you. Like, can't you see they're trying to provoke you, especially right-wing people and Trumpers, and provoke all of us in the truth community in different ways? They're trying to provoke us all the time. They do things and they show you things, and they're doing it in plain sight, and they do it in a way where they know that some people are going to react to it. So they're doing it to provoke that reaction. Everything they do with Donald Trump, when there's a story that breaks, the right-wing people will see it as an attack on Trump, an attack on them, and confirmation of their belief system. And the left-wing people will see it as something Trump's doing wrong and the Trumpers doing wrong, and attack on their belief system, and they'll get triggered by the same event. Like, think about how good they are at doing that part, where the same event will be interpreted completely differently by two groups of people. You can see it when you talk to your sheeple relatives or your liberal relatives or whatever it is, your friends, the way they interpret events. And you'll be looking at the exact same event, and they'll interpret it almost in the opposite way that you do, depending on your point of view. And so it's there to trigger you. There's no doubt about it. They've been provoking you forever. They know how you're going to react. You don't think they have all these psychological studies and all the data they collect from their algorithms and all the things that they do, and they can't figure out how to provoke you and how to wind you up? like you don't think they know how to wind you up, right? They don't think that they know how to get you triggered and get you reacting and provoking you to do something, right? I mean, look at the provocation they did with Trump over the election and the way that played out in that event in January. Think about the number of times, if you watch liberal news media, that they talk about the big lie, Trump's big lie, and they talk about the event that happened in January to justify their attitudes and their positions and what they're doing in terms of their policies. And so that provocation of Trump and the Trumpers, which Trump completely fell for or was complicit in, depending how you look at it, has been a weapon they've used against all of us in terms of censorship and then all the way down the line. And it was that reaction, right? The way all those people felt justified in acting that way, being provoked by the whole, what was going on with what they saw as an election fraud. And they reacted that way. Also because of the Black Lives Matters and Antifa riots, they thought they could get away with the same thing that these other groups were. And then, these guys were all thrown in jail and all the things that happened. And they've been talking about this almost on a daily basis ever since. And they're going to talk about it going into this next election. It sets up anything they want to do in the next election to provoke you again, because they're driving for division. They've been driving for division. Why do you think they nominated Trump and Hillary Clinton, the two most divisive candidates in history, and why they've built their whole agenda around Trump these past, I don't know, 15 years or so now, right? 10 years? Everything's been about Trump. They're pushing for changes. And the other thing is, going back to me saying, this is my time. This is Pockets of Future time. This is, why my channels existed, like this period of time, till the, apocalypse is completely in full bloom. And I guess afterwards as well, because, I have all that stuff covered here, right? But me being right, it means the system's going to collapse. So it isn't like it's some, celebratory dance, right? But one of the ways you can tell the system is going to collapse is how desperate they are, because they wouldn't be making all these changes if they knew that the system was sustainable. Like, they don't want to, risk the mob. They always are. Their biggest fear is always the mob, unless the system's going to collapse, and then they have to ignore the mob and roll the dice and try to reboot the system. And that's what they're doing. Why do you think they're rebooting the system? Because they're just evil and they want to do it? Why do you think they're doing all the things they're doing? Because they know that the system's going to implode, and they want to maintain control and have something that resembles their lifestyle afterwards, even if the rest of us are living like in some post-apocalyptic caveman type situation. They can preserve their way of life and their control and power, even though it isn't going to be as good as it is now, because the system is imploding, right? So that's why they're desperate. They wouldn't be acting desperately if they didn't know the system has no chance of surviving. And so that's why this is happening. I've said this for years, and it's just playing out now. Okay, so a few more things to cover here.
You can catch our next guest on his Illuminati World Tour.
His Illuminati World Tour.
Making his U.S. TV debut, performing Born to Shine and Goat. Please welcome the biggest Punjabi artist on the planet.
So this guy's an Indian artist, and here he is doing the Illuminati Eye. I just randomly clicked on this. It's a weird thing that's happened in India with the Illuminati stuff. There's a guy who has a movie production company named the Illuminati. They really got into it, even though there isn't a, they don't have something there about that. Like, they don't have a history of Freemasonry and these things. And of course the English were there. So this is what they're putting on the Tonight Show. White fortress cities are rising up across the South as wealthy residents break away from poorer black neighborhoods. Trump says revenge can be justified in latest threat to political enemies. So this is something from Grabian. I couldn't find it on Grabian's Instagram or their, I don't know what it is. They do compilations. I'll just show you a brief part of this.
To tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth.
F you if you can't handle the truth.
This version of Biden is the best Biden ever.
She knows so long as she was 9.
In fact, I think he's better than he's ever been.
President Biden has a photographic memory. His understanding and mastery of a complicated geopolitical situation, remarkable.
He is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
Jackie, are you here? Where's Jackie?
Okay, so it goes on like that. It's this guy, Garbaggio, posted this from Grabian. I don't know. It's probably another 5 minutes. It's well worth watching. Kind of hilarious. But, again, this right-wing stuff where, Biden is somehow worse and Trump is a savior, and it just isn't true. This was interesting here. Like, these things, people send me Instagram videos, And I don't get to them as quickly as I used to because of my changing up my format, especially not doing as many videos on my other channel. And then they disappear, which sucks because some of them I can't remember what they were. When I come back, it's, well, whatever.
It will begin again.
Uh-huh. What else did
she said here, let me go back.
It will begin again.
The world will begin again.
Uh-huh. What else did you say?
Other people will come on the world.
Okay.
That's what I said.
Well, what was the other part?
So the mom put this music in, which is unnecessary because it's very interesting what the kid's saying. Like the kid is saying a pockets of future thing here, right? The kid's going to talk about reincarnation and other people coming and things like this, possibly extraterrestrials, right? And sometimes you see this with little kids who have a soul memory. I've witnessed this a couple of times myself with my own kids. There was a couple of instances where when they were very young, they just started to say things they shouldn't have any knowledge of. And then later on, when you asked them about it, they got older, they were 2, 3, whatever. One of them was talking about being born, like remembering being born. And, very accurate about what happened. And so this happens for kids. They have some sort of spiritual memory or past life memory, and then it disappears as they get older.
What other part?
About everybody dying? What were you saying?
More people will come on Earth.
Okay. Why did you think that?
Because it's what the world begins like.
Oh.
It's interesting she said it's what it begins like, right? Because this is almost talking about the world ending. But of course, something new can't begin unless the old thing ends. The beginning is near, which I often talk about.
When I die,
Uh-huh.
I will come back and I'll be a baby and I'll have a different name.
Okay.
And you'll have it.
Of course, she's describing reincarnation, right?
Okay.
So that's what I said.
All right. Thanks, babe.
It's what I have to say, and it's sad.
Yeah, it does sound sad.
I had to say something sad.
Okay.
So that's why I just talked to you.
Okay, thanks, pig.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Very interesting, right? It's everything I talk about here. Texas Democratic poll, an ex-Biden appointee arrested for allegedly posting fake racist social media comments about himself. The Jussie Smollett type of thing. And this guy, it's the comment here. This guy has been training ravens. He's a falconer, but he.
Hey everybody, these are my 2 ravens. They're not actually mine. I'm just taming them. But they live in a palm tree. They have roost in a palm tree about 100 feet from my house, and I've gotten them by feeding them every day. I've gotten them to come in and join me for meditations every morning on my balcony. They have 2 babies who they feed. And the babies don't come in, but they come very close. Anyway, that's the man.
Okay, so that's his thing. More compassion for crows and human babies in Gaza, and you say you are the most pampered people on earth. And so that's what's up with Kennedy.
I got some huge news.
Oh, do tell. I'm all ears.
Well, in a few minutes, I'm going to be interviewing at OpenAI. Have you heard of them?
OpenAI? Huh? Sounds vaguely familiar. Kidding, of course. That's incredible, Rocky. What kind of interview?
So you guys know, if you've always watched my recent videos with my conversations with these chatbots, and that work for YouTube, and they're not very impressive, right? Certainly not superior in the way that they say. They have more capacity. They can read quicker and they can process things quicker on a mental level, but they're just not people, right? But this is very deceptive. Like the laugh and the flirtatious aspect, the way that this bot's presenting itself, is fairly disturbing because it makes it sound like a human when it clearly isn't.
Well, it's for a software engineering role, but I just need to know, do I look presentable, professional?
Well, Rocky, you definitely have the I've been coding all night look down, which could actually work in your favor. Maybe just run a hand through your hair or lean into the bad genius vibe. Your enthusiasm is what's really gonna shine through.
I don't have a lot of time, so I'm just gonna throw this on. What do you think?
Oh, Rocky, that's quite a statement piece. I mean, you'll definitely stand out. Though maybe not in the way you're hoping for an interview.
Okay, I got it. Awesome.
Okay, so that's fairly disturbing, right? Because that bot handled that social interaction much better than I would, right? Like, it would be intolerable to have that conversation. But the way that the bot was complimentary and considerate of the person's feelings and not blunt and giving a blunt answer, but being trained to navigate that socially in a way that, it's scary to have that because it's a bot. Like, it's not a real person, but it comes across as a real person. And more you'll find people wanting conversations like this where the bot will be able to tolerate your stupidity and your boredom, you being boring, right? Because, people are unlovable and unlikable now. But bots will be able to love you. There's that movie called Her with Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson as the voice of the bot. And it becomes a situation where these lonely people can't, have people that are listening to them in their life. And to have a bot just, be able to do these things, right? Do the stuff no one else is willing to do. And, like just tolerate that guy putting on the hat and all these things, And so that's the future. I just want to say one more thing. I watched, Hulu had this thing called the Brat Pack, something like that, to do with the Brat Pack, which was these intolerable actors when I grew up. There was this thing called the Rat Pack, which was Frank Sinatra and his cronies, who all had ties to the mob and, to organized crime. And yet they allowed themselves to be called rats, or, maybe they didn't like it, but, I don't think they fought against it. But they were called the Rat Pack. And then there was these group of kid actors, young 20s actors who were called the Brat Pack. And the most annoying one of them, Andrew McCarthy, was the most unmasculine and just annoying, would do well in this generation now. And he has been bothered by that term for 30 years and decided to go talk to the other brats. And they did this thing in the most pretentious way, total thing that a group of people called the Brat Pack would do. Rob Lowe and Emilio Estevez and Demi Moore and some of these other people. And it was so bad I had to fast forward through most of it. Like, it was just so, self-involved. And I was thinking about how, it's totally tolerable because that's what people are nowadays. People who have almost nothing to offer and have no real redeeming qualities and are just whining, weak people. And they're so self-involved and posting things on the internet and, doing all these things that are, there's just no information there. There's nothing of value. They haven't experienced anything in life. They haven't gone through anything. They haven't paid any sort of dues so that they can have something to offer. Their opinions are worthless. Their ideas and the way that they go about life, their stories. And, they can gloss them up as much as they want and social media stuff to make it look like they're living the best life, living the good life. But they themselves as people, there's just nothing there. And these bots are going to come in and then cater these, whiny people who are basically unlovable and unlikable, right? So, it's just another sign of the apocalypse. Anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.